Yeah, peace and love, yo. We know how we do. We cause ruckus everywhere we go. We just finished shutting down Marjorie Taylor Greene. She tried to bring that hateful rhetoric to Manhattan, to New York. We not having it. Nothing but love, baby. Democracy is all about love.
Nothing but love.
People, love for humanity. Got Louis in the building. Now we're about to get on some bikes and ride around New York City because it's a beautiful day. It's springtime.
Nothing
it's all
but
about
love.
No, don't spread no hate.
Don't spread no hate.
Green, don't bring that hate here.
Don't bring the hate there, Marjorie.
We about to go to STEAM school, check out innovation, design thinking in our public schools. I got Louis in the building. Y'all don't even see us in a minute, son. Y'all forgot how we do. Wherever we go, we change the game. We revolutionaries. Join us. Stop
the
playing.
Game. Revolution. All right. Yeah. I'm not exactly sure what the broader context of what they're discussing there is. I don't know who Louis is, but that's just because I'm not really into New York politics. What I am into is pointing out rampant hypocrisy. Now, if I didn't know who Jamal Bowman was, I would say he seems like a very jovial character. He seems very nice, very sympathetic. I even though I know who he is, I'm still like, he seems cool. I might want to hang around with that guy. You notice, by the way, they shut down Marjorie Taylor Greene and they just show an image. An image is worth 1,000 words, correct? But video, which has 32 still images per second for however long, is worth that many more words. I hear the fire alarm going off. It's not a fire alarm. We're having it serviced because it keeps going off when anybody uses the shower. Ignore that if you can hear it. They show the image, but no video, which is very curious. It's a great image. Jamal is jovial. He's promoting a message of love, peace, and unity. He doesn't tolerate hate, and it's wonderful. And from that image, I'm seeing a very strong man standing up for those convictions. Oh, what if I told you there was more to that image? Well, you might already know it if you watch my stuff, because there was another angle from another one of them peace and love Democrats, Michael Rapaport. I'm joking because I don't know why. I don't know why Jamal pronounces her name Marjorie. I'll see how he pronounces her name. He mispronounces it. I don't know why. Michael Rapaport was in the crowd and gave us the video, which is worth 72,000 words. And I spliced it together to highlight the rampant, shameless, gaslighting hypocrisy coming from those who preach peace and love, who have no hate in their heart. And then
peace and love, yo. We know how we do. We cause ruckus everywhere we go. We just finished.
Well, I don't know how do you cause ruckus everywhere you go and peace and love, no hate, and all that. I don't understand that, but it doesn't matter.
Shutting down Marjorie Taylor Greene.
Marjorie. Shutting down Marjorie Taylor Greene, whatever.
Taylor Greene, she tried to bring that hateful rhetoric to Manhattan, to New York. We not having it. Nothing but love, baby. You animal, you! Go back to the farm, you animal! They're looking for you at the sanctuary!
Well, looks like
Democracy is all about love for all people, love for humanity. Get the fuck out of New York, you racist, sick, filthy, infected animal! It's all about love. No, don't spread no hate.
Don't spread no hate.
Green, don't bring that hate here. It's all about love.
Marjorie.
Get the fuck out of here! Y'all forgot.
Marjorie, don't make us expose our hate by you coming here and bringing your hate and making us hate. It's your fault that I'm screaming that.
How we do. Wherever we go, we change the game. We revolutionaries. Join us. Stop playing. Yes, sir. You animal, you! Go back to the farm, you animal! They're looking for you at the sanctuary! Peace and love, yo. Nothing but love, baby. You filthy animal!
Peace and love. People, peace and love. They practice what they preach. They are the party of love. And if it weren't for Marjorie Taylor Greene and her hateful presence, they wouldn't have had to act like rabid, frothing at the mouth, wild animals. Just because she's there. It's Marjorie Taylor Greene's fault that they mobbed her, chased her out of the Big Apple. I guess it's not such a welcoming city. Of course, it's not welcoming for hate and disinformation. And so they had to bring on the peace and love in violent manner to scare her out of there, shut her down, and make her recoil with her security and head for safety. Steve, before we get into things, I'd like to say I made a very big mistake this morning. It's sunny outside. It's spring/summertime, and skin needs to get exfoliated. It needs to get exposure to sun. You can see, like, I've got something of a tan line there. And I said, I'll just trim the hair down a little bit so I can get some sun, scrub off the dead skin, maybe take care of some ingrown hairs, some whiteheads, whatever it is. 1.5 on the manscape thing is very short. I feel naked. And most importantly, I feel ugly. And I have a chin, so it's not like my facial hair hides the chin, but facial hair adds volume to a face. But it's these scowl wrinkles here. That's like this because my face has been like this for too long. I got these jowls now, so I got to stretch it out. I'm gonna get sun. I'm gonna exfoliate, let the hair grow back, and get some help. But yes, I've made a terrible, terrible mistake. And it's right after you test it and then you get one stripe very short and then you're like, that's it. There's no going back now because can't have one stripe unless I'm going to go with some new form of like low stripe, dark stripe, whatever. So that's it. Viva, we all age. Ugh. See, I don't mind this one. It's this one here. It's the jowls. But of course, I blame the world for all of this. Thank you very much, Sandra Brazil. The other thing, one should not be too attached to these superficial aspects of one's identity. I realized I loved my facial hair a little too much. It's good to have that cold shower. It's useless. It's worthless. It's just physical attributes of one's identity. Still not cutting my hair. If I cut my hair, I'm going to feel naked. Okay, so that's it. Now, I couldn't tell what to start today off with. If I started off with Jamal Bowman preaching his peace and love while the mob of rabid Democrats preach something that's not quite peace and love, or if I start with something coming out of the Canadian Parliament, the new Democratic Party, the new Democrat Party, the NDP, proposing legislation to ban protest within a certain vicinity of drag shows. Couldn't tell what to start with. I figured we're going to start with the peace and love coming out of New York City because it more closely relates to the bulk of the first hour of this show, which is going to be the Trump indictment and walking through all of it now. I've had time to digest. I've had time to read. I've had time to pick the brains of people who I consider to be more informed than me. Glenn Greenwald, Robert Barnes, Stephen Crowder, and team. So the first hour of the show, we're going to talk about that. I think we won't need more than an hour because there's not much to that indictment that can be discussed above and beyond going in circles as to how absurd it is. But we're going to do that for the first hour, go over the indictment, go over the statement of fact, and then go over Alvin Bragg's press conference in which, oh, hold on one second. Oh, son of a gun. In which he walked us through the thought process, the rationale. He looked like a kid who got caught cheating on an exam. He looked like a kid who had to admit he didn't read the book and was just bullshitting through his behind. I put together a montage, and it'll really tightly synthesize his 15-minute press conference in which he took 4 questions before he ran off like a dog with his tail between his legs. Which? Oh, before I even get into that, I do a good job with my sponsors, but I do a very bad job with my own merch. Who, what, when, why, where, whatever. Who, what, merch. If you want to get a shirt or anything, go to vivafrei.com. The bumper stickers are good. One day I hope to pass another car that happens to have a Politics Ruins Everything or Viva Frei Live Free bumper sticker. It will happen, but you can get bumper stickers, shirts, yada, yada. All right. So, oh, by the way, I'm an idiot. After the first hour in which we go over the indictment, we will then have Billboard Chris coming on, give or take 240 to 240. He's got something before, so maybe 240-ish. And we're going to have Billboard Chris talk about what he's doing, the absolute madness of the world. And that's going to tie into the proposed legislation coming out of Ontario to prohibit protests within a vicinity of drag shows, or as they're calling them now, drag artists. We'll get into all of it. They start with your right to protest COVID measures. And then once they realize that they can legislate away your constitutional rights to peaceful assembly, you thought they'd stop at COVID? Fools! Okay, are we live on the Rumbles? It looks like we are. Let me see what we got here. Sweet, okay. And are we live on the locals? We are. Not gonna lie, let's see here. This is in MNL Hay says, here we are all watching Viva's facial hair grow. Not gonna lie, it is a wee bit more exciting than watching paint dry. That's coming from our locals community. You can also go to vivabarneslaw.locals.com to be part of our wonderful community. So where do we start? Last week, Trump was indicted. The headlines, felony indictment, and the headlines for the most disingenuous of left-wing media, 34 indictment charge. Donald Trump is such a career criminal. He's such a menace to society. The number 2, not T.O. He's such a menace to society that he's facing a 34 count indictment. It's preposterous. I actually forgot one thing before we even get there. Could you post a link to your merch above? Only see mugs. Not sure it's the right website. It isn't. Don't go to Teespring in YouTube. Go to vivafrei.com. Just vivafrei.com. I got the domain. Not many people are after that. And just a word, no medical advice, no election fortification advice, no legal advice. These things called YouTube super chats on Rumble, they have Rumble rants. If you want to support the channel through a one-off tip, you can do it that way. YouTube takes 30% of this. So 30% of 5 is $1.50. So I would get only a $3.50 off this tip. If you want to support the channel in a more cost-effective manner that also supports free speech, go to Rumble, give a Rumble rant. For the rest of 2023, 100% of the proceeds go to the creator. After that, Rumble Rant's take is 20%, which is better than YouTube. It's a better platform than YouTube. It supports free speech better than YouTube. And so feel free to do that if you so choose. Otherwise, the best way to support, just share, like, snip, clip, subscribe. No, you've shaved off 20 years. You think I look younger? I actually think I look older, Fox, but thank you. I am a weak, sensitive man, so I will take compliments today. Corn Pop in the house. All right, and that's it. Okay, good. The indictment. Trump is a hardened career criminal facing 34 charge indictments. When I walked through the indictment, because Barnes posted it as soon as it was available on Locals, when I walked through the indictment, I'm like, what? How the heck do you get to 34 indictments in this? 34 charges? Because it all looks like the same thing. So I started reading it, and I couldn't even tell the difference between count 1, count 2, count 3, up until count 34. So we did this briefly on Locals, the Locals exclusive part of the stream yesterday, when I realized that Barnes had posted this to Locals. This is the indictment. We don't need to go through, how many pages is it? It's so bloody long because he's such a criminal. Look at everything that he does. He's just a terrible, terrible man. Terrible, 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 Mr. Trump. How do you do that? Parentheses. One of my earlier memories, we spent a Christmas, the only Christmas we've ever spent away from the cottage in Florida in 1991, the year of, what's that movie called? Kevin Costner. In the Western with Kevin Costner. And my father was pulling into a parking spot, and somebody pulled in front of him, or there was almost an accident. And she looked at my father. She goes, "Terrible, terrible, terrible," and I never forgot that. Yeah, he's just such a terrible person. I mean, look at all this. We don't need to go through 15 pages of the indictment because it's virtually, literally cut and paste, but change a date and change the charges. Change the charges in terms of what Trump is being charged for, because this is. You know my ideological leanings. You know where I stand on certain things. You can call this a partisan interpretation. It is not. This is as objective as any interpretation out there, because even the lefties, who are the most rabidly anti-Trump, say this is basically an accounting dispute that has been enhanced to a felony. Because what it is basically one hush-hush payment to Stormy Daniels in the amount of $130,000. One payment which itself is not even a crime, according to most. One payment which is not itself a crime, but the way they structured the payment was something like a monthly retainer to Trump's attorney at the time, Michael Cohen. So they took this payment, $130,000. They added some other amounts to it. And they said, okay, well, we're gonna round it up. We're gonna just say it's $400 and some odd $1,000, but we're gonna pay you X amount of dollars per month as, retainer fees or whatever it is that Cohen called it. And so you get like a 9-month payment system derived around this one alleged illegal hush-hush payment, which it probably isn't. And so each month when they paid the retainer, each payment was part of this conspiracy to disguise, mislabel, mischaracterize the hush-hush payment. So when they, and it's not just that, because then it would only be 9 indictments, right? It's like 9 payments of $30-some-odd thousand to get to the aggregate amount. That would only be 9 felony charges. You got a felony basically for having stated the payment was X. You get another felony charge for having entered it into the books as X. You get another felony charge for having entered it into the margins of the bookkeeping as Y. So you basically, for every payment of this one aggregate payment, which was broken down over, I don't know, 7-9 months, you get 9 felony charges for that. 9 felony for entering it into the books as whatever it was on that given month. So we're up to like 18. And that's how they multiply this. What is at best a misdemeanor charge, but in all likelihood, nothing. They take it and they enhance it to a felony by, and then multiply the felonies by saying the payment was one thing, writing the check was another thing, entering in the books was another thing, entering into the and don't take my word for it. Let's just see here. Let's go. The grand jury, let me just make sure that everything is good here because I realize I haven't been looking at the chat in a while. It's a flipping joke. It's such a flipping joke. I'll pull up some tweets from people who loathe Trump that say this is only going to help him. Like I wanted to get behind this indictment, but this is bullcrap of the highest order. It's grade A bullplop, and it's only going to help Trump, which leads me to believe that a lot of people would deal with a grade A bullplop indictment if only they truly believed it would actually hurt Trump. They don't care about the bullcrapness of the indictment. They just want to make sure that if they're going to exploit the law and weaponize the law, at least they want to make sure that it hurts Trump and doesn't help him. They have no problem weaponizing the judicial system, bastardizing it, and turning America into a banana republic, so long as it actually hurts Trump. But if it doesn't hurt Trump, well, then what the hell are they doing it for? The defendant in the county of New York and elsewhere on about February 14, so the dates are important, February 14, 2017, with the intent to defraud and intent to commit another crime. Wait until you see the montage of Alvin Bragg's press conference. Another crime is going to come up time and time again. What the hell is the other crime? Spoiler alert. It's questionable. It's dubious, to say the least. And aid and conceal the commission thereof. Made and caused a false entry in the business records. Here you got a false entry in the business records. To wit, an invoice. So he prepared the invoice. Felony 1. I think felony 2 is going to be having paid the invoice. The defendant, February 14. So we're still talking about the same payment. Yada, yada, yada. With the intent to defraud and commit another crime. Made the false business entry, to wit, an entry in the detail ledger. Understand what's being said here, people. He says, I'm going to pay Michael Cohen. So the first indictment, the first felony charge is making the invoice, falsifying business records. The second felony charge is entering it in the ledgers of the company. That's the second one. Bearing voucher number, yada, yada, yada. What's the third one? Third count. The defendant, February 14, same invoice, same entry into the ledgers. He caused a false business entry record, to wit, entry in the detailed ledger of Donald Trump revocable trust bearing. So there's 2 vouchers for this. I don't know. Fourth count, still on the same date. It's a joke. It would be a joke if it weren't so devastatingly unfunny. With the intent to commit the same thing, yada, yada, a false entry in the business records, revocable trust, check and check stub. So you got the invoice, you got the ledger entry, and then you got the check and the check stub. There's 4 felonies out of 1 installment of the payment of one and the same alleged hush money payment. And this is what happens throughout the entire indictment. Then you got March, because the argument is that he turned this $130,000 hush payment into an amount that they were going to bill as income to Michael Cohen. And so it ended up being like $400,000 in change. And they said, well, we'll pay you in monthly installments. And so every monthly installment turns into a 4-count felony for the monthly installments on the payment for the one act of the alleged hush money payment to Stormy Daniels, which was allegedly illegal, although not even. March 16, March 17, the detail ledger. Okay. We don't need to go through this because it's a bloody joke. This is it. what you have is nothing more than an accounting dispute that has been turned into a 34-count felony indictment against the former president of the United States of America. What do we all have to say about that? Let me make sure we're good here on Locals, Rumble, we are. What do we think about that? Like no joke, on a scale of 1 to 10, 1 being not bullplop and 10 being Wagyu bullplop, how do we rate this? I mean, I don't want to get. I don't know if the rainbow has to do with the tyrannical war declaration. I think you're talking about the indictment, in which case I'll agree with you, Corn Pop. What scale of 1 to 10? 15 and 15 was the right answer. It's the utmost of absurdity. Corn Pop had a $1.99 sticker, and we got Florida Dad. Haven't seen you in a while. So wait, Trump commits crimes on an installment plan. Oh, and then the issue is, nonetheless, after all of this, Florida Dad, thank you. This is right. This is how, when you're going to break the law knowingly, you're going to make sure that you space out the payments for it, instead of just paying cash, which was one of the options that they allegedly discussed and decided not to do. But then, so we've got what is basically an accounting dispute, a tax dispute, for which, oddly enough, well, we'll see if the IRS comes after Trump now that they have this indictment. But the fact that they haven't is probably an indication of something. You have that pesky little thing called the statute of limitations. If this is my understanding, people, and I'm picking the brains of people that are smarter than me. I'm a Quebec civil law attorney. Never did criminal, never did tax. I studied it, didn't study tax, but I studied criminal. I did a lot of landlord-tenant disputes. I did some IP, copyright, and then general stuff. The commercial litigators out of Quebec were the jack of all trades, which makes us the master of none, as the expression goes. Statute of limitations, from what I understand, insofar as this was ordinarily a misdemeanor charge, statute of limitations would have been 2 years. These payments allegedly occurred in 2017. So they got to get around the statute of limitations. How do they do that? Well, they trump it up to an indictment. They trump it up to felonies, as Alvin Bragg did. George Soros has got to be so happy with Bragg. Like, this is the best $1 million that George Soros ever surreptitiously funded through a political action committee to get the progressive DA of his choice elected to office. I mean, it's the best $1 million. If this is publicity that money cannot buy. George Soros, well played, sir. Well played. In order to get past the statute of limitations or expand it from the 2-year misdemeanor, they had to trump this up to felony charges. But even then, the last payment, add to stream, as far as I recall, the last payment would have still been 4 months beyond the statute of limitations to pursue this. If we just go to the end here. They brought he was indicted last year's 2023, and we're in the month of March. So the last charge here was December, which would have meant that this is 4 months out of the statute of limitations, even if you give it the 5 years. The argument is that they reiterated, or when they filed their taxes or when they did their accounting to process these felonious installment payments, they did that in 2018. Yeah, 2018. March, give or take, which means that they then can retroactively sort of say, you reaffirmed all of your prior criminal acts by ratifying them in 2018. So that's when prescription or a statute of limitation runs from. So therefore, we're still within the 5-year statute of limitations. And because it's unclear as of now what exactly is going to be the argument for getting beyond the argument of the statute of limitations, there's that argument. They ratified this in 2018. Therefore, they sort of ratified or renewed the criminality. So 5 years begins from then in 2018. The alternative theory that I've heard some people discussing is something called tolling. In Quebec, we call it basically suspension or pausing of the statute of limitations, prescription period in Quebec. So the time in which Trump was out of the state and could not be prosecuted for this, suspends the statute of limitations. So while he was president, they couldn't really serve him, so they had to pause the statute of limitations. So they have that novel argument as well. That novel argument to prosecute bona fide, preposterously enhanced misdemeanor to a felony 34-count indictment from one hush money payment. Okay. I don't think we need the PDF for that anymore. What insanity is an understatement. So that's how they're going to try to get past the statute of limitations. The bottom line problem with all of this, there's two, and I might have to pull up the statement of fact. The disparate. So look, there's different tiers of the obviousness of the preposterousness of this persecution. The first and most basic is at the evidentiary level. It's not to say like the charges themselves can't stand even a cursory challenge at law. On an evidentiary basis, the only witness or the main witness to all of this is Michael Cohen, an admitted convicted perjurer, who either lied then or is lying now, because the two statements Michael Cohen is making now to try to go after Trump versus then in his plea deal are mutually incompatible. Cohen went to jail for lying about having made a contribution that exceeded campaign limits. He allegedly did it unbeknownst to Donald Trump. That's why he was found guilty. That is mutually incompatible with the idea that Trump reimbursed him for the payment to Stormy Daniels, which means that it wouldn't have been his payment for him to get convicted of in the first place. So he either lied then or he lied now. So that's at the evidence. Who are you going to believe? You're going to believe the liar now because he's telling you can go after Trump? Some jury members might say, yeah, we'll believe the liar now because we hate Trump that much. That's at the evidence level. How are they going to make their evidence? Michael Cohen has to come in and testify that this was Trump reimbursing him for a payment to Stormy Daniels. Therefore, it was Trump mislabeling feloniously a payment. Michael Cohen is a bona fide, convicted, admitted perjurer, liar. So that's at the evidentiary level. The bottom line problem with this is that even if Michael Cohen is telling the truth now, it's not obvious that in fact, it's almost obvious that it's not a crime. Because if Donald Trump reimbursed Michael Cohen, despite what Alvin Bragg says, thus exceeding the maximum contributions to a campaign, my understanding, again, picking from the brains of bigger brains and smarter people, someone cannot contribute too much to their own campaign. So even if Trump made that $130,000 hush payment to Stormy Daniels for his own benefit, for his own campaign, he cannot exceed maximum contributions to his own campaign because that's not how the law works. We'll get there because Alvin Bragg touches on it in this is the indictment. This is not what I want to see. Alvin Bragg touches on this in his embarrassment of a press conference yesterday. We're going to get into, it's called the statement. Let me see. Paragraph 24 is where we want to get to. This is called the statement of facts in support of the indictment. The people of the state of New York against Donald John Trump. Defendant Donald J. Trump repeatedly and fraudulently falsified New York business records to conceal criminal conduct. What criminal conduct? They don't have an answer for that. What criminal conduct? They say it over and over again because the felony charge is predicated on the payment concealing another crime, which they haven't specified yet, which many think is going to be federal election law. And it's not clear that a state can rely on a federal law, a federal election law, to underpin an indictment for falsifying business records on the basis of hiding the crime of violating federal election law. Apparently, this is a thorny legal question that has yet to be answered. What better person to try this thorny legal case on than the former president of the United States of America? So that's it. He orchestrated from August 2015 to December 2017. Statute of limitations, bear that in mind. Defendant orchestrated a scheme with others to influence the 2016 presidential election. You would think that they're talking about Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, to censor that Hunter Biden laptop story to impact the presidential election. You would think maybe they're talking about Hillary Clinton financing the Steele dossier to prepare bullcrap bogus opposition research, which they then leaked to the FBI through their lawyer who billed the campaign to leak it to the FBI, who then leaked it to Yahoo News, who then published a story that FBI then relied on in order to get an unlawful FISA spy. You would think they're talking about the Clinton campaign, but they're not. No one is above the law, but some people are more below the law than others. Sorry, I just got sidetracked. The defendant orchestrated a scheme with others to influence the 2016 presidential election by identifying and purchasing negative information. It's called the catch and kill, and it's not clear that it's illegal. Information about him to suppress its publication and benefit the defendant's electoral prospects. My understanding is that even if, and for this to be a crime, the catch and kill would have to be exclusively and only for the purposes of affecting an election, whereas there could have been dozens of other reasons for which anyone would want to catch and kill, buy the rights to, and then never publish a story, and buy the silence of people who might try to embarrass someone maritally, professionally, potentially in the context of an election. In order to execute the unlawful scheme, still haven't mentioned what the crime was, the participants violated election laws, which ones, and made and caused false entries in the business records of various entities in New York. The participants also took steps that mischaracterized, for tax purposes, the true nature of the payments made in furtherance of the scheme. Yeah, that's what Michael Cohen was convicted on. But my goodness, you'd think they're talking about Hillary Clinton and her financing the Steele dossier, then lying about it. But they're not. But this is where it gets interesting. Defendant falsified business records. Shortly after being elected president, the defendant arranged to reimburse lawyer A, which is Michael Cohen, from what I understand, for the payoff he made to the defendant. That's on the defendant's behalf. That's Trump. In around January 2017, the TE CFO and lawyer A met to discuss how lawyer A would be reimbursed for the money he paid to ensure woman two's silence. That's Stormy Daniels. The TO CFO, Chief Financial Officer, asked A to bring a copy of the bank statement for essential consultancy, yada, 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 the $130,000 payment. CFO and lawyer A, Michael Cohen, agreed a total repayment of $420,000. They reached that figure by adding the $130,000 hush money payment, $50,000 payment for another expense, which lawyer A also claimed reimbursement, for a total of $180,000. They then doubled that amount to $360,000 so that lawyer A could characterize the payment as income on his tax returns instead of a reimbursement, and lawyer A would be left with $180,000 after paying approximately 50% in taxes. So it looks like if it's an expense and you get reimbursed for an expense, this is not tax advice at all, and I'm fairly certain I'm right, but you don't get taxed on a reimbursement of an expense because it's not income. If you claim, if something appears to be income, but it's actually the reimbursement of an expense, you'll get taxed on that as though it's an income and not the reimbursement of an expense, which itself would not be taxable. So if they're going to try to conceal this reimbursement of an expense, that being the payment to Stormy Daniels, as income, Michael Cohen is going to get taxed on the $130,000 as if it's income and not reimbursement of an expense. So they're basically doubling it to cover the taxes that he's going to have to pay by characterizing it as income and not the reimbursement of an expense. Now, incidentally, some lawyers will not play games, because I don't know, I'm not exactly sure like how it works, but some lawyers will, in their remuneration, not break down expenses versus labor. And so they say, here it is, all of it costs $50,000. That's what I'm charging you. Pay me $50,000 and don't worry about the costs I incurred in order to render you those services. Unclear how they're doing that here, but that's the rationale. Together, these amounts total $420,000. They have the handwritten notes. Okay, yada, yada, yada. And then they said they're going to do this in monthly payments of $35,000 over the course of 2017. Each month resulted in 4 felony charges: for writing the check, for issuing the invoice, for entering it in the ledger, and for entering it in the vouchers, whatever that is. Okay, then that's it. That's all we really care about. That's the scheme. I don't think we need to go through this. And by the way, if you want all of this, it's in our locals community. Didn't Stormy Daniels have to pay Trump's attorney? She did when she lost the defamation suit on a slap. I think she got, slap under that context can have a different connotation. She lost the defamation suit and had to reimburse Trump's legal fees. I don't know if she did it. She did say that she would go to jail before paying him a penny. That's the scheme, everybody. Weak sauce is what it is. Now, before we get into Alvin Bragg, but you know what? It might be a good time. How long? We've been going for 35 minutes. Everybody, I'm going to give you the link again. Let's do the rest of this on Rumble. We got 30 some odd minutes before Billboard Chris gets here. And we're going to go through Alvin Bragg because I saw a Rumble rant and it's going to be on point. Make your way over to Rumble, people, if you are so inclined. If you don't want to go to Rumble for whatever the reason, go to Locals. Here, vivabarneslaw.locals.com. After Rumble, I go over to Locals exclusively and answer some questions, have some, fun discussion among us. I forgot to get into my fossil yesterday. I picked this up in Vegas for my kid. I'm going to talk about this exclusively on Locals because I forgot to mention a few things about it. It's beautiful. This is fossilized amber with lots of flies in it. So if you're interested in that. All right, see y'all on Rumble. Good. But before we go to Rumble, I'm just going to bring up a couple of the Rumble rants here so as to show the proper respect. Okay, we got James B. 1968. When will the DA be held to account, if ever? Next election? I got to tell you, we're gonna watch my synthesis of his presser. Dude looks ashamed. Now, maybe I'm just projecting, and I know there's a lot of people out there who say these people are not capable of shame. These political types, these partisan hacks, they're so motivated by hate, they are incapable of shame because everything is justified so long as it is in pursuit of party goals. I do have a feeling also that people can't be ashamed if they have no pride. You have to have pride in order to feel shame. I think a lot of these hyper-partisan political hacks, they have no pride and therefore they're incapable of feeling shame, or they're just outright narcissists and they just think genuinely that what they're doing is justified, benevolent, and right. But he looked shamed. I mean, he looked embarrassed. He looked like he didn't believe a word of what he was saying. And by the accounts of even the left-wing media, they are not impressed. Even if the frothing at the mouth Michael Rappaport's they got their excuse to scream their love and peace. Oblivi Dan says those who make peaceful protest impossible make violent conflict inevitable. I think it was actually John F. Kennedy who said that. Okay. Let me see here. Mike the V-Dub says they're sociopaths. They know they are doing wrong, but don't care. Not shame, fear of being found out. Well, that's another thing. I mean, so we're going to get into District Attorney Bragg's presser right here. I'm going to go put vivabarneslaw.locals.com one more time and Rumble one more time. And then we're going to end on Rumble. We're going to end on YouTube, go over to Rumble, and Billboard Chris is going to come to talk about the recent madness in Canada and the assault where in Canada you literally had cops laughing at Billboard Chris, who just got violently assaulted, and we'll watch it. So ending on YouTube right now. See you on Rumble, people, in 3, 2,